It doesn't matter if she moves on, dates someone else, or pretends it didn't matter. The truth is, the emotional impact of your silence stays with her. Because most men can't do it. Most men collapse. You didn't. And that quiet strength becomes your signature. She will forget arguments, apologies, even compliments. But she won't forget the moment the energy shifted, when you stopped giving, stopped chasing, and chose yourself. That silence wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of a new chapter, one where you finally became unforgettable. So speak less, mean more, walk strong, let silence do the talking, and trust me, she'll never forget it. A man's silence speaks louder than 1,000 texts. Not in anger, not in spite, but in strength. Because when a man goes quiet, something inside her wakes up. You see, most men chase. They over-explain. They beg for clarity. They flood her with calls and messages trying to fix, convince, or win her back. But the man she never forgets is the one who didn't say a word. Not because he didn't care, but because he respected himself enough to walk away with dignity. Because he realized that his peace was more valuable than any forced connection. Silence is not weakness, it's power. It's the ultimate shift in dynamic. When you stop reacting, when you stop trying to get her attention, you stop giving her control. You remove the emotional fuel, and in that space, that silence, she starts to hear everything she once ignored. She'll remember how you didn't chase when she pulled away, how you didn't argue when she disrespected you, how you didn't cling when she became distant. That silence forces reflection. It forces her to question her actions. It forces her to ask, did I just lose a man who actually valued me? And here's the truth most men never learn. When you can go silent, not to manipulate, but to protect your energy, you show her that you're not just another option. You show her that your time, your love, your presence all come with standards. You're not going to perform for attention. You're not going to fight for breadcrumbs. You're not going to sell your soul just to stay in her life. You'll walk quietly, confidently, completely, because you know who you are and what you bring. And that silence, that unexpected void, that's what echoes in her mind long after the noise of other men fades. She might forget your compliments. She might forget your gifts. But she'll never forget the man who went silent. Because that was the moment she realized you were worth listening to. When a man chooses silence, it is often misunderstood as detachment or coldness. But in reality, it is a deep act of self-respect. Silence isn't about playing games or manipulating someone's emotions. It's about drawing a clear boundary between your peace and her chaos. When a woman expects you to argue, explain, or chase, and you do none of that, it sends a powerful message. You are not a man who negotiates your value. You are not here to prove anything. You are here to protect your energy, and if that means walking away quietly, so be it. This kind of silence is calm, not cold. It doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from clarity. You've reached a point where your standards matter more than your feelings. You understand that being available to someone who doesn't appreciate your presence only weakens your power, and instead of demanding to be seen or heard, you simply remove yourself from the situation. You choose peace over approval. And that's the moment you shift from being just another man to being unforgettable. A woman may not respect the man who constantly pleads, explains, or waits around. But she will always remember the man who calmly walked away when his respect was compromised. Because silence is rare. Most men react. Most men beg. But when you can stand in silence, not with arrogance, but with self-control, you elevate yourself above the noise. You send the message that your time, energy, and love are earned, not owed. And even if she doesn't say it, she feels it. Deeply. That quiet confidence doesn't just go unnoticed. It lingers. It haunts her thoughts. It makes her wonder what she lost. That's the power of silence backed by self-respect. It's not loud, but it's unforgettable. When you go silent, something happens that words can never achieve. You give her space to feel your absence. Not your anger, not your frustration, just the vacuum where your presence used to be. And that vacuum speaks volumes. It forces her to sit with herself, without the distraction of your constant communication or reassurance. She may have been used to you always reaching out, always initiating the conversation, always trying to fix the mood. But now, with your silence, there's nothing for her to push against. And that's when real reflection begins. This isn't about being passive-aggressive. It's about giving her the rare experience of solitude in the dynamic. Because only in that stillness can she really ask herself the hard questions. Why isn't he calling? Why did he walk away? Did I take him for granted? These questions don't come when you're still chasing. They only come when you stop. When you fall back, it disrupts the rhythm. And she starts to hear the echo of her own choices. Most people avoid silence because it's uncomfortable. It forces introspection. But for you, that discomfort is your power. Because while she's spinning through memories, trying to make sense of your absence, you're regaining your strength, you're healing, you're building. And through it all, she's now the one wondering what changed. She may have dismissed you when you were too available. But now your silence forces her to remember your value, not through pressure, but through absence. And if you were truly a man of substance, your silence won't just be noticed. It will be deeply felt. That kind of stillness leaves an imprint. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And that whisper stays in her mind long after the noise has faded. Neediness is one of the quickest ways to kill attraction, and most men don't even realize when they're being needy. It's not always about begging or chasing. Sometimes it's the subtle tone in your messages, the way you always initiate, the anxiety behind every unanswered text. It's the emotional pressure you place on her to validate your worth. And over time, that pressure becomes heavy. It drains the polarity. It shifts the dynamic from desire to obligation. And once that happens, it's hard to come back from. Silence, on the other hand, is freedom. It's a reset. When you go quiet, you stop feeding the loop of emotional dependency. You step out of the pattern where her reactions determine your sense of value. You no longer revolve around her mood, her attention, or her approval. That space you create by pulling back isn't just for her, it's for you. It's a break from needing constant reassurance and a return to your center. When you go silent, you start focusing on yourself again. You return to your mission, your purpose, your inner peace. You stop trying to win her back and start remembering who you were before you made her your emotional anchor. That energy shift is powerful. It doesn't scream desperation. It radiates strength. And women feel that change, even without a word being said. You no longer come off as someone who needs her. You come off as someone who values himself. That contrast is striking. It reignites curiosity. It reintroduces the man she once saw as confident and grounded. And that's when things often start to shift, not because you tried to pull her back, but because you finally let go. And in that letting go, you took back your power. Respect is not something you can ask for. It's something that's earned through how you carry yourself, especially in moments of tension or distance. When a woman sees that you don't react emotionally, that you don't try to chase her attention or demand her time, she starts to view you differently. The man who stays calm and silent instead of pleading or proving is the one who leaves an impact. Not because he's cold, but because he's in control of himself. That level of discipline is rare, and women notice it more than they let on. Most men don't realize how closely their behavior is being watched. Every word you say when emotions run high is a signal. Every move you make when she pulls away is a statement. If you rush to fix things or chase her validation, you send the message that you value her opinion more than your own standards. But when you step back in silence, you flip the dynamic. You're no longer the one seeking approval. You're the one setting the tone. A woman might not admit it out loud, but she respects the man who can remove himself without creating drama. He doesn't need to yell. He doesn't need to guilt trip. He just walks. That kind of strength commands respect because it's not about control. It's about emotional mastery. Silence isn't passive. It's active strength. And that strength shifts the way she sees you. You're no longer someone trying to keep her. You become someone she doesn't want to lose. Respect grows in the space where neediness once lived. When you don't make her the center of your emotional world, you give her a reason to value your presence. That shift doesn't require words. It requires restraint. And restraint, in the right moment, is unforgettable. ChatGPT said, "There's a moment in every connection where the energy shifts. When the man who used to be available, responsive, and emotionally invested suddenly goes quiet. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. That's the moment she remembers forever. Because it's unexpected. It breaks the pattern. And in that break, she's forced to confront the reality of what she had and how she treated it. When you go silent, you create a void, and that void speaks louder than any final message you could have sent. She starts to feel the weight of your absence, not because you shouted or begged, but because you simply stopped showing up. She may not realize it immediately, but that silence creates a lasting imprint. It becomes the turning point in her memory. Before that moment, you were someone who kept trying. After that moment, you became the man who let go. And it's that transformation she can't forget, because now the dynamic has changed. You're no longer emotionally accessible. You're no longer seeking her attention. You've reclaimed your power without ever having to explain yourself. That silence lingers. It makes her reflect on everything. How she spoke to you, how she treated your efforts, how she may have taken your presence for granted. It doesn't matter if she moves on, dates someone else, or pretends it didn't matter. The truth is, the emotional impact of your silence stays with her. Because most men can't do it. Most men collapse. You didn't. And that quiet strength becomes your signature. She will forget arguments, apologies, even compliments. But she won't forget the moment the energy shifted, when you stopped giving, stopped chasing, and chose yourself. That silence wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of a new chapter, one where you finally became unforgettable. So speak less, mean more, walk strong, let silence do the talking, and trust me, she'll never forget it.